honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to America's Voice Now. This is the third segment in our Saturday morning show. If you're catching this on YouTube, I encourage you to go back and catch the last 30 or 45 minutes of episode 2, because we started a series discussion here on a mainstream media propaganda ministry project that is infiltrating the United States and has been for decades now. Callers, I'm going to take your call after I finish this because I want to make sure I get this out of the way. And then I want to open the floor to discussion. So if you want to hold, you can hold, but we're just going to have to finish this. With kids all around, we have the school in the back, and it's scary, said neighbor Eileen Redziski. This is an emotional quote designed to elicit memories of Newtown. Why is it scary that this guy has 300 firearms and is a repair business? I mean, I don't get the correlation. You don't say that because a computer repair shop has 300 machines in their building that are in the various stages of repair, that the place is probably a hacker's paradise laden with viruses seeking to destroy the banking community, do you? You don't say that a guy who's got a junkyard full of cars or a guy who's got a repair shop with a field full of vehicles that are waiting to get repaired is a danger to the community because drunk drivers might steal the cars, which don't run anyway, and go out killing people on the streets. Do you? There are over 300 million guns in the United States. And based on the FBI's own statistics, there are approximately 13,000 gun deaths per year that don't count suicide. So that means, if you do the math, that the gun-to-death ratio is 0.00043. Even if you add in suicides, it only doubles the rate to 0.00008. Not exactly a statistic that any gambler would take, and certainly not one that should scare you based upon mere proximity to a weapon. Prosecutors said even scarier still is the fact that Steiner's Tree Street house is in the middle of a pattern of 25 recent burglaries. So because he lives in a rough neighborhood, he shouldn't be allowed to own and have weapons? He shouldn't be allowed to have a repair business? An astute reader might wonder why Steiner's house wasn't robbed in the first place. Perhaps the burglars knew better than to target his home. Regardless, the fact that recent burglaries occurred is no reason to restrict his Second Amendment right to self-defense, protection of life, and property. Next sentence, and this is all from CBS's version of the story. Had a person, a kid, a professional burglar, whatever, gone into that house, said Mr. Spoda, in no time flat, 85 handguns would be on the street today. Translation: an emotionally laden statement intended to put fear into the heart of the reader. 85 handguns on the street. Oh, my goodness. Well, let's remember that most of those handguns, if not all of them, were in a state of disrepair and probably not functional. Logic and reason dictate that with a spate of robberies in the neighborhood, it might do a homeowner well to be armed. Since when do we hold the crime victim responsible for the actions of the criminal? That girl was wearing a swimsuit, so she had it coming. Really? Would you accept that? So because she was wearing a swimsuit, You were entitled and she deserved to be abused? Really now? If that's what you believe, you better turn off your radio right now. Or that sporting goods store has guns and bows and machetes inside of it. If it's robbed, in no time flat, we'll have people running around with guns, bows, and machetes. So we better close it down. Remember Mr. Spoda's comment. Had a person, a kid, a professional burglar, whatever, gone into that house? Well, first of all, a person who goes into the house, a kid who goes into the house, does not necessarily describe them as a professional burglar. The only person in that list who would concern us would be a professional burglar. And we have no idea what the level of security was on the premise. Did the guy have triple locks on the doors? We don't know. They don't tell us that. I then give you a link to the CBS version of the story. And here's the final line that I've torn apart for evaluation. This is Mr. Spoda. This fellow had more firepower than the detectives when they went to search the house. Translation? Anyone who owns a firearm is a powder keg waiting to explode. In truth, anyone who has more than one gun is better armed than the police officer who knocks on the door, isn't he? I mean, just your mere possession of one single gun in a second makes you better armed than the police officer who knocks on the door. He's only carrying one. So if you have two, you are 100% better armed than he is. What kind of an asinine statement is that, Mr. Spoda? This fellow had more firepower than the detectives when they went to search the house. Let me ask you this, and you should ask yourself this question. When you read media reports, these are the questions you should be asking yourself. Well, did he threaten anyone? I mean, the fact that he had more firepower than the detectives doesn't make him guilty of anything. I have a car that can do 150 miles an hour. It doesn't mean I use it. Doesn't mean I'm dangerous with it. Did he use any of the weapons? Did he brandish them? So why would this be a thread of interest other than to elicit an emotional response from the reader to make them feel uncomfortable? Oh my God, this guy was armed to the teeth. It is so irrelevant to the story, they might have just as well told us what Steiner had for breakfast. Here, below this are links to the other stories. As you peruse them, read between the lines. Begin to understand exactly how the text is formulated to give direction to your thinking, and to understand that you are being manipulated. I challenge the reader of this story to spend a few minutes on the following exercise. Read each of the stories. Note the tone and the tenor and the feel and the emotion-laden language. Now, forget the fact that the guy had guns. Forget the subject matter. Now read it again. But this time, read between the lines and understand what they are trying to make you feel. Note that you're not supposed to use your own critical thinking skills, logic, reason, or objectivity. You're just supposed to feel the emotion. This exercise will open your eyes to the tactics used to condition you. What's important to note in each of these stories is the carefully crafted way in which each writer manipulates the facts for all of the sensational and fear-inducing product that he or she can muster. From now on, remember this exercise for every story that you read or hear or see. Sometime, try watching a TV program with the sound turned off. Notice how exaggerated their movements that drive home an emotional response. Notice how effusive the actors portray themselves with body language, and how silly the characters look when you don't have the reference of words. That's reading between the lines. You're being manipulated by words, characters, thoughts, ideas, and stories that utilize the emotional side of your brain, not the logical, reasoning side. And going forward, you'll never be fooled again. I want everyone to go out there and pick up a newspaper. I don't even care what paper it is. Find a story that's controversial. We're not talking about a human interest story about Betty who won an award. We're talking about a story that is on a criminal issue. And I want you to exercise your right to use intelligence, logic, reason, and critical thinking skills. And I want you to take this information and I want you to analyze and avail yourself of that intelligence and read between the lines as you do this story. The important thing here for you to understand is this. The television in front of you, that box that you own, or it's no longer a box now, it's a platter, is designed to do one thing and one thing alone: to indoctrinate you into a way of thinking. You're being herded. You're being herded towards a mental corral where you will be sheared, fleeced, and or milked. Remember what we're talking about here. We'll be right back.
The area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry.
Online at westplainspawn.com.
Top of the line new and used optics from Nikon, Leopold, Burris, Redfield, Zeiss, and Schmidt & Bender. Ask about their selection of binoculars, laser sights, and night vision goggles. With new arrivals every week, the area's best selection of firearms, ammunition, and accessories can only be found at West Plains Pawn and Jewelry, 1713 West U.S. Highway 160, or shop online at westplainspawn.com.
We believe the better the ingredients, the better the taste to bring to you the greatest tasting pastries possible. At Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, we use organic, locally sourced, and natural ingredients of the highest quality. Every item is handcrafted and baked fresh for you each and every day. Visit Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, number 2 Evans Arcade on the Courthouse Square in downtown West Plains. Or call ahead 255-2253. Be sure to like and follow Chantilly's Artisan Bakery on Facebook.
All right, we're back. We have about 40 minutes left to this show. I want to hear from you. I want to hear that you have used your critical thinking skills to understand and evaluate a story similar to this. It doesn't have to be this one. In fact, I don't even want it to be this one. We've beaten this dead dog with a dead horse, or vice versa, long enough. But what's important for you to recognize is that you are being manipulated. Our telephone hotline, which is sponsored by Wits End Classic Barbershop, that number is 257-1111. And if you live out in the hinterlands and you want to call from long distance, you can call us toll free. That number is 866-554-6636. You had a story you wanted to talk about, Mike. What was that?
When you're talking about this entire subject of all things in the world, it reminds me of how they capture pigs in the jungle in Central and South America. And the way they do it is they put out food on the ground, and they do that for about a week until the pigs get used to coming to that area and eating.
Right.
Then they put the food on the ground, and they erect one single panel of a fence.
Like a wall.
Like a wall. And then the next week, okay, when they put the food out, they put 2 panels of the fence in an L shape on the ground.
Right.
And then the following week, 3 panels, so the pigs are used to going inside of this thing in order to eat the food, and then they put a top on it. And then finally, the last thing that they do is they put a gate out on the end so that now that the pigs are finally conditioned to coming inside of this thing with the top and these 3 sides on it, the last time they come in, okay, the gate slams shut behind them and they got them.
And they don't have 1, they have 8 or 10.
And the pigs don't get all excited and everything like that when the gate shuts behind them because they've spent so much time in the proximity of having all these walls and everything
Being
around
acclimated.
them. Yeah, that when the gate shuts behind them, they're just like, well, okay, I'm all locked up in this thing, but
as long as there's food here, I'll stay. You see, folks, what this really is what's called incrementalization. You're being incrementally fed the food, and you don't even realize that the trap is being sprung around you. Go ahead, caller.
Is it me?
You're on, bub.
Oh, well, you fell prey to a little manipulation yourself.
Say again?
On your statistics.
Yes.
Because if somebody breaks into somebody's house and the homeowner shoots them, that's a gun related death.
Well, that's true. I mean,
so the numbers would be even lower.
I would imagine you're actually correct, but I'm even trying to give you the benefit of the doubt because a gun to death ratio of 0.00004 is so minuscule it's not worthy of even mention.
No,
and this is the fear by which let me tell you something. There's really only 2 things that drive human behavior. One is fear and the other is reward. And they can't reward us unless it's they do drive you via reward when they have things like the New York State hotline now where you can call up and reward someone for ratting out a guy who does an illegal gun transfer. But the real way that they get you is by fear, more often than not, because it's easy for a lot of people to be made fearful suddenly at once. And they've done this over and over to us in the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on obesity, it's just the war on whatever, the war on cancer, the war on poverty. It's all about fear-mongering. And we fall for it every time.
Yeah, and it's so they can control that particular aspect of your life.
It's the Hegelian dialectic. If you're not familiar with that, go look it up, folks. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. Create a problem, provide the solution when the Indians
reaction.
Right, when the Indians start screaming for a resolution, you get the reaction you want. Now you go out and you offer the solution to the problem that invariably ends up coming with a lot of government control. And they've been using this on us for decades now.
And you pay for that control. Welcome.
There you go, bub. Hey, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate it.
You bet.
If you'd like to call in, folks, you can call us on the Wits End Classic Barbershop. The phone lines were just loaded, and now they're empty. You can call us on the Wits End Classic Barbershop at 257-1111 or 866-554-6636. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hear me, Mike?
I can.
I was wanting to know why you spoke earlier about the $700 billion that was missing, but you didn't mention the fact of the $2.3 trillion that came up missing on September 10th, 2001. I mean, I think that has more significance than the current theft was the one that was trying to be covered up all those years ago.
Quantify what you're talking about. You're talking about after September 11th. What happened?
Well, no, it was September 10th. It was the day before when Donald Rumsfeld come on the news and told us about the $2.3 trillion that came up missing out of the Pentagon.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Well, and listen, I can't reference every story. I mean, this would just happen to be fresh in the news. But you've just reminded everyone that is true. The day before September 11th, on September 10th, Rumsfeld announced that there was and I've forgotten what the point was, but it was a staggering number, that was missing from the Pentagon's budget, and nobody could explain the where, why, how, and where it went. And September 11th...
Everybody forgot about it.
And, well, as soon as September 11th occurred, right, it was like the last thing anybody wanted to talk about. So you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
Well,
and thank you for reminding us.
Hey, I appreciate your show. I listen to you every day. So.
Thanks very much. And listen, folks, you too. The goal here, people, is to use your critical thinking skills and start understanding what's being done to you and how you're being manipulated. If you're a fence sitter and you're really not sure where all of this is going and you're a little bit concerned, you got that feeling in the back of your head like something's just not right, start using your critical thinking skills to make sure that you're really opening your mind to what's going on around you. It's called situational awareness. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Michael, at this point in time, we're going way past normal propaganda techniques. You're looking at things like neuro-linguistic programming, where changes in the perceptual presentation of words changes thought patterns.
But these guys are experts at it, and they've had a lot of time and a lot of training and a lot of money to generate it.
That's right. It is a science.
Yes, it is, and it's being practiced upon us. This is no different than a doctor practicing on you when he knows what the outcome is going to be if he puts that shot into you, or if he has you take this pill, he knows what the outcome is going to be. It's going to kill the virus or kill the bacteria or whatever it is that they're working on. You can
literally, tailor it to your target audience. The way Latinos would think about socialism is somewhat different than the way a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant population would think about it. And by altering the presentation, you can literally alter the outcome of what they think about it.
Sure. Are you familiar with the Delphi technique?
Yes, sir, I am. The Hegelian dialectic, yes.
The Delphi technique
I had to graduate from high school and take some college before I ever even heard of it, though.
Yeah. Well, they don't teach this in any school that I'm aware of. But the Delphi technique is in use every day. In fact, you see our president using it every day. You know what he says? He says, most Americans want universal background checks, as if he's taken a personal poll. Now, the truth of the matter is, most Americans don't want universal background checks. That's why they're having trouble getting it through Congress, because most people are against it, and the vocal groups that are representing most of those people are calling up their senator and saying, if you do this, we're going to quantify it as treason. And so
part of it has to do with the way the surveys are presented. The wording of the surveys are presented in such a way as in order to elicit the response they want.
Sure. Well, and again, this goes back to the example I gave earlier in the first show, which is, what is the major advantage of socialism? Now, this is straight out of a textbook in a school. And here's the question that they ask. What is the major advantage of socialism? A, it is more efficient than capitalism. Well, we all know that's not true. B, more people share in the benefits of society. No, that's not true either, because those people only share in the benefits of society as long as there's a wealthy few around to soak. But after the money runs out, all chaos breaks out. C, it results in low production costs. No, it doesn't. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It results in higher production costs because it eliminates competition and a free marketplace, and it forces production to be in the hands of ineptocracy governments. D, it is free from economic instability. It's free from economic instability only insofar as the fact that government controls everything, and therefore they can print money, just like we're doing today, to make it seem as if there is no instability when in fact it's rampant.
The stock market's cruising along, yeah.
But what fails to be seen here is option E, which should say either none of the above, or the alternative answer would be, this is an absolute lie and this textbook should not be in front of our children. What it does say at the bottom is, please select the best answer from the above choices. And ladies and gentlemen, that is mind control being perpetrated on the tender mind, the influenceable mind, the manipulation or the manipulable mind, the malleable mind of your children. Thank you very much for your call, Glenn. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be more than happy to take your calls. And if you're not going to be willing to sit on hold for a minute until another caller gets his words across, you're listening to the wrong show. The whole idea of this is that we discuss things. So I see the phone lines lit up. I take one guy. He has about 30 seconds on the phone, and you all hang up and discuss because you didn't get picked first. Listen, they come in the order they come in. Either wait or go listen to go watch a Kim Kardashian show or something. If you don't have the attention span to wait 30 seconds, you're listening to the wrong guy. We'll be back in just a minute.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. 3 coalition troops have been killed in a blast in Afghanistan, according to NATO, which says 2 civilians working with the alliance also died. In his weekly address, the president pushing the benefits of the budget he'll release next week, while Republicans say it's states that have solutions to fixing the federal government.
Our Republican message is a belief in the power of the people more than the control of government. This unleashes the creativity of entrepreneurs and the strength of hope and dreams. Kansas Governor Sam Brown back with the GOP address. Former South African President Nelson Mandela has been discharged from the hospital where he was being treated for pneumonia.
He will now receive home-based high care, and we are all very happy with the news and grateful to the doctors and the hospital staff for looking after him so efficiently and well.
Spokesperson for President Jacob Zuma. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Thanks to Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop for sponsoring our phone lines. You can call our Wits End Classic Barbershop hotline, and you can get over there and get yourself a shave and a haircut. 2 bits. Well, a little bit more than 2 bits. Thanks to our friends over at Pizza Hut as well. On Porter Wagoner Boulevard, they have an outstanding lunch special, and on Tuesday nights, they have Kids Eat Free. Children under 12 eat for free. They're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. Make sure you visit Pizza Hut. Our friends at the Battery Station, 303 Washington Avenue at batterystation.com. You can also reach them via telephone at 257-7799. Folks over at West Plains Pawn and Gun. Kenny's a friend of ours and a great supporter of our program. 417-256-3000, located about a mile and a half on Route 160 past Walmart. You can reach him also on the web at westplainspawn.com. Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance. Half-mile east of Walmart at Route 62 in Mountain Home. You can find them on the web at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com. And you can call them at 870-492-4030. My friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, the best damn bakery in 100 miles. She can be reached at 417-255-2253. You can also find her at number 2 Evans Arcade. Outstanding bakery. Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 2930116. Whether remodeling, building new, or doing some kind of custom construction like commercial or farm work, Bill's the guy for you. 2930116.
It's a call and make your voice heard on the biggest issues making headlines today or on absolutely anything in your head. Every call I get goes on the air totally unscreened. It's unpredictable and uncensored, and you'll never know what to expect. Anything can and will happen on the next Alan Combs Show.
And that's who you can catch every weeknight, 9 till midnight. The Alan Combs Show on the Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point, Monday through Friday.
Weather is a service of News Talk 107.1 The Point. Contact Josh or Cody at 255-2548 for more information on making weather sponsorships part of your marketing plans.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, we have partly sunny skies with a high near 72. Winds could gust as high as 28 miles per hour. Tonight, slight chance of showers and thunderstorms after 1 in the morning, a low around 52. I'm Dawn James, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
The next big thing from Samsung is coming soon to U.S. Cellular. Meet the all-new Samsung Galaxy S4, the phone that gets to know you. Scroll through a page without ever touching the screen. Turn your phone into a TV remote control. Take photos you'll never believe came from a smartphone. Visit uscellular.com to find out how you can get the all-new Samsung Galaxy S4 from the provider that puts people first. U.S. Cellular. Hello better. See uscellular.com for details.
All right, we're back. And we're back for the last half hour of part 3 of our 3-part show on Saturday morning. You know, I like this 3-hour format better because it's a little bit more relaxed. I don't have to jam so much information into one hour. And, I like to get deep into the weeds to analyze what's going on. And that's part of what's wrong with America, is we don't give ourselves a chance to actually analyze and think critically about what is happening and what we're being told and why and how we're being told that. It's really important that we understand what's being done to manipulate us. We talked briefly about this idea of the Delphi technique, and I'm going to explain to you how the Delphi technique works. And by the way, they're using it on your children in school, number one, every single day. But I've also seen it in use in local community meetings. I'm going to explain to you how it works, and you're going to grasp it immediately. So they hand out a group of paper, or pieces of paper, to everybody in the group. There's 20, 30, 40, 50 people sitting in a group. And they say, these topics are the 5 topics that we're going to address today, immediately precluding any topic outside of the 5. And then they hand out the paper and they say, so what we want to do is we want to build consensus. And so because it's groupthink, the best way for us to build consensus is to understand what our audience, you and the 50 people sitting in the audience, want to talk about as priorities. So on your paper, you're going to find 5 items, and we want you to sit down and prioritize those 5 in the order in which you think that they should be of importance. And so everyone fills them out and hands them in. And they take a break, and everybody goes out and has a sandwich or a glass of water or a cigarette or whatever their thing is. And everybody comes back. And then the moderator, the actual, by the way, manipulator, that's a better word for what he really is, he stands up in the front and he writes on a grease board, okay, so we have these 5 bullet points. And we're going to talk about these 5, and these are the 5 that have credibility. And so he immediately builds what? A sense of credibility into those 5. Those are the only 5 worthy of talk. There's no 6th. There's no 10th. We're only going to talk about these 5. So he's precluded you from having an opportunity to discuss the concerns that you have versus the concerns they tell you should have. And then they've asked you to prioritize those concerns. And so now he says, we read all the documents, and priority number 1 by the consensus of the group is this. Priority 2 is this, 3, 4, 5, etc. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, that wasn't my question of priority. My question on priority was pricing or availability or whatever the topic of discussion is, because this can be used for any topic. And at this point, they say the group says that this should be the first priority. And you are left with one of 2 thoughts, if that wasn't your choice. Well, okay, I guess since the group thinks that that's the most important one, that's the one that we should use. Or 2, I wonder why I'm not thinking in line with the rest of the group. But in either event, your concerns are now pushed down. Then they come out with item 2. And they explain why the group has a general consensus that this should be the priority. And you're thinking, well, I'm not quite sure why I understand that, but if that's what the group says we should have as a priority 2, I guess I'll have to agree with it. And since I'm only one person out here, if I raise my voice, I'm going to look like the sore thumb. And let me tell you something, that the moderators / manipulators who are utilizing this technique are trained to take the lone voice of dissent and minimize that person. What they do is they minimize you by taking your concern and they belittle it, or they criticize it, or they make you look foolish, as if you're paranoid or delusional.
Or they'll pass it over and then never come back to it. Oh,
right.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Right. We're going to talk about that topic later. And then at the end of the class, they're like, well, we run out of time. We couldn't talk about Bob's concern, so we're just going to have to address that at another date. Meanwhile, what they've done is they've built groupthink consensus. And what you walk away from at the end of that meeting is the feeling like, 1, you were totally ineffective, or 2, totally disruptive to the rest of the class because you were dressed down by the moderator in public, and or 3, well, maybe my priorities are really skewed and the rest of the group really has their act together, and I'm the one who's the lone outsider. And maybe my thinking is a little paranoid here. You get it? The whole idea, and by the way, what you don't know is really going on here is that 40 people in the class all did agree on one thing that should be priority one. But it wasn't the one that he wrote up on the board as priority one, because you don't know how many other people agreed with you. Do you understand what's going on now? They take those papers and they say, what we want as priority 1 through 5 is vastly different from what the audience came back with. But we're not going to, and here's the problem. Most people are too shy to speak up in public and say, well, wait a second, sir, I didn't choose that as priority 1. I chose pricing as priority 1. Not the social concept of, well, how do we distribute these items? How do we distribute these items shouldn't be priority 1. How are we going to pay for them should be priority 1, right? And he belittles you, or most people won't even have the courage of their convictions to speak up. Did you know that there's a statistic out there that says 60% of most people, or 60% of the people polled, are terrified of public speaking, and 40% of those would actually rather die than speak publicly? You know why? Because the idea of the Adelphi technique has been used on you in school. When you raised your hand in an effort to answer the question, and you answered it in a way that the teacher didn't want the groupthink to go, he or she belittled you and trained you not to raise your voice because you're adult, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're paranoid, you don't think like the rest of us.
And that is the ultimate goal. And that is the ultimate goal. They want us all thinking in lockstep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go read Animal Farm. If you have not read Animal Farm since you were in high school, I'm going to ask you to read it again. And I'm going to ask you to read rule number 1, the way it starts out, and then the way that it's modified. In the first part, all animals are created equal. After the pigs take control, the phrase gets changed. All animals are created equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
There you go.
Guess what we have, folks? We have a nation where all animals are created equal, but there's a group of animals that are more equal than other animals. I'm going to tell you who they are. They are those either who cater to the political world, or they're those who are scheming and conniving to get free food stamps, free rent, free houses, free cell phones, free health care. Those are the animals that are more equal than others. You know why? Because all the other animals actually have to pay to support the animals that are more equal. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, Mike, that persecution of that gunsmith there reminds me of something. We had these barristers from the London Law Society just after independence start filtering in here up to date with all this statutory crime. And I can't wait till we get back to the 3 elements of a crime under common law. And that's what the forefathers had in mind.
Right. Go ahead.
Number 1, intent. Okay. Number 2, the tool of the crime. Number 3, the body or the victim. And
it had to cause damage to a victim or it wasn't a crime.
Yeah, none of
there
them.
Had to be a victim.
That's right.
If the victim is the state because you were doing 65 and a 55, that's not a crime. It's a crime prevention technique, but it's not a crime. It's a victimless crime. And therefore, under statutory law, they classify it as a crime. Under common law, you could never be prosecuted for that, and that's your point.
That's right, and that would clear the docket of 90-some% of the cases, clean it up good. Now, you talk about emotion and language. I had a Texas County judge. He's deceased now. That was Nola Prost. But I had one really being cruel to me language-wise every time I come in.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he said, "You're a habitual misdemeanor traffic violator headed for the big house." Now, that's what they do, try to intimidate.
Wait a minute. Can you say that again?
Did you say that phrase again?
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Oh, he said, you are a habitual misdemeanor traffic violator headed for the big house.
The big house. Here's your ticket to the big house.
So
sign here.
So you've collected so many misdemeanors that you're now a felon.
Well, you know, I said, Judge, I understand what you're trying to do there, demeaning me and putting me down. But I said, I'm going to come right back at you. He says, oh, you don't think you are? I said, well, I like to describe myself as a consistent, peaceful, traveling infractioneer. And he was not amused, but you know what?
I'm an infractioneer. I love it. Hey, listen.
Yeah, I'm a consistent, peaceful, traveling infractioneer. And he started talking to me better at further hearings.
There you go. Hey, we've got to take a break. Thank you so much for that call.
Bye.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap this up with your calls. Have a great moment. We'll be back in a second.
If you're looking for a new or used pistol, shotgun, or rifle, West Plains Pawn & Gun has over 450 firearms in stock. All your favorite models like Beretta, Glock, Smith & Wesson, Kimber, and many, many more. West Plains Pawn & Gun is also a Class 3 arms dealer, so if they don't have it on the shelf, West Plains Pawn & Gun can order it for you. Even those hard-to-get guns. West Plains Pawn & Gun, 1713 U.S. Highway 160 West in West Plains, or online at westplainspawn.com.
The Donut Palace in West Plains, where the customer is still king. If you're a school group, church group, sports team, or any group function, book it with the Donut Palace. Order 24 hours in advance and at least 3 dozen to receive 10% off your bill, and you won't have the burden of paying tax either. Open 7 days a week from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. except Sundays when they close at 1. Call today at 417-256-0606 to have delicious hot and fresh donuts at your next meeting. Located at 914 Broadway in West Plains, the Donut Palace.
At Napa Auto Parts in West Plains, from now until the end of April, they are offering an oil change special. 5 quarts of Napa fully synthetic motor oil and a Napa silver oil filter for $19.99. Save up to $10 with mail-in rebate on wiper blades or spark plugs, and Seafoam motor treatment under $7.
America's Voice Now, delivering truth over mainstream propaganda every single day. Hi, my name is Michael Evans, and I'm your host, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., and Saturday morning from 6 to 9 a.m. Join me daily for important guests and my unique slant on hot topics in the news. Visit americasvoicenow.org for even more news, articles, and commentary, and watch our show streaming live to your PC. Share your morning with me. Get educated, informed, motivated, and activated. America's Voice Now, right here on 107.1.
You know, folks, the manipulation factor of what's going on in our society today is so strong that you have been conditioned to think that driving without a seatbelt is actually an offense.
I'm a consistent infractioneer. I am a consistent infractioneer in that arena.
I mean, wait a second. Where's the victim in you driving without a seatbelt? And here's how they justify it. They get into this long-winded argument about how, well, when you're in an automobile accident and you're not wearing a seatbelt, you get more physical damage, and so therefore society has to pay your medical bills for you. That's the twist.
We're paying them anyway,
right? And not to mention we're paying them for literally 20 or 30 million illegals, right? But that's the twisted logic that they use to try to justify unconstitutional and extra-constitutional limitations on you that are statute-oriented. Now, there's another one out there, and I know this one will get me a bunch of email from haters. Prostitution. It's a victimless crime. If she's willing to sell her body and you're willing to pay for it, who's the victim?
And it's not illegal in the entire nation.
No, it's legal in where? In Nevada, right?
Right. But here's how competent the government is, okay? Years ago, there was a place called the Mustang Ranch out there.
I've heard of it, yeah.
All right. Well, the Mustang Ranch was got sideways with the IRS over taxes. So the federal government came in. Okay?
So wait a second. They couldn't tax the prostitutes enough, or the prostitutes weren't paying their taxes. Amazing.
I'm
Go ahead.
I'm not going
Go
there.
ahead.
Okay. But the federal government comes in and seizes the Mustang Ranch.
Okay.
Now, this place has a Missouri state liquor license. Okay, so
Nevada,
they have a bar.
Nevada
state liquor license.
Right.
Okay. And, the girls are performing their services.
Right.
All right, so the federal government comes in, they seize the place. 18 months later, they have to close it down because your government, cannot turn a profit at selling liquor and women.
You got to be kidding me.
The best man.
Now hold on a minute, because there's a whole layer. There's layers upon layers of onions in the depth of this story. First of all, the IRS ran the Mustang Ranch for 18 months.
I don't know if the IRS ran it directly or if they turned the management over to like a management company.
Right.
But any entity. Anyone.
Well, it would have been a court appointed. It would have been a court appointed, kind of like in a bankruptcy, right? Where they appoint an administrator to step in and operate the business on behalf of, you know what I'm saying? On behalf of the government until the bankruptcy can be completely dissolved. But for argument's sake, you're telling now. By the way, obviously and apparently, the Mustang Ranch must have been making profits in order to have to owe taxes in the first place. So it was a profitable venture until the IRS determined that they were going to try to run it, and then they dragged it to bankruptcy because they couldn't run it and make a profit on booze and women.
Right. There you go.
And I don't know how you can't make a profit on booze and women. I mean. You get in a bottle of scotch, right?
We're going to be in a lot of trouble for this, by the way.
I told you this was going to create a ton of nasty emails I was going to get, right? Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, Mike. Have you ever watched any Alex Jones's tapes?
Sure. I mean, I don't watch them all religiously. I'll be honest. Alex, and I like him, and he's a great guy to get the word out there. But what I don't see Alex Jones doing is providing solutions to the problems, which is what we try to do. But go ahead.
Well, anyway, I seen there where when the IRS was fighting the British, they blowed up like a restaurant, and then the British all went in there.
You mean the IRA?
Took everybody's rights away and all that with a big army and all that. But then it come out in the paper that the British was the ones that blowed up the restaurant.
Yeah, well, that's called a false flag operation, and we see those in play every day. In fact, we can see that false flag operations have the Lusitania was sunk to drag us into the war, and that was a false flag operation. They knew damn well that ship was going to get sunk. Maybe they didn't actually fire the missile themselves, but they knew it was going to happen. So false flag operations, I'm going to tell you something right now. We had empirical proof that the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor weeks before they did. In fact, we moved 70% of the fleet off of the island because we knew that they were coming. And we sacrificed those ships that were destroyed in an effort to get American population excited enough about jumping into the war to do that. So, hey, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show. Turn your radio down.
Yeah, Michael, I fail to see what the IRS running the Mustang Ranch is wrong. I mean, one criminal operation running another, I mean, that's just standard operation. That's called the mafia or the IRS, either one.
Well, isn't it funny that the government operates like the mob in most situations instances anyway?
Money, racketeering, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely. Hey, truth is spoken there, my friend. Thank you.
As much as they're screwing the rest of the citizenry, you'd think that would have been something they'd have been really good at.
Right.
Oh,
right.
my God.
Well, how do you not make a profit when you're selling alcohol? Because, I mean, look, every bar knows that you buy a bottle of alcohol for, let's say it's a bottle of scotch and it costs you $12 wholesale. And you're selling it by the shot, right? And you're selling it, even if you're selling it for $1 a shot, it's a 32-ounce bottle, so the profitability is $20. Oh. How the hell do you not make money selling alcohol?
There's something on this guy up in Suffolk County, New York, that I wonder about. Is this guy Spoda that's running his mouth, Mr. Prosecutor?
Yeah.
And I wonder whether or not he's an elected official. And then I also wonder...
if he's not, it's because he's planning to be.
Yeah, and in which case, and this is something that should come to everybody's mind, when they hear anyone who is a public official speaking,
right.
Okay, people need to think about
what's the motive.
What's the motive and what's the agenda?
Well, you'll notice that prosecutors almost invariably always run for Congress. In fact, one of the guys I like the most who's in the Senate right now, Ted Cruz. Guess what? He was the Attorney General in Texas. He was a prosecutor. He was not the Attorney General, I apologize. But he worked for the Attorney General's office, and he was a prosecutor. Now, I have to tell you, I believe that the criminal justice system in our nation is so corrupted at this point that there is no such thing as justice any longer. But, and I have to admit, I got to admire Cruz for what he's doing up there. I'm just praying beyond all doubt that the guy is actually true and fair and equitable in what he's really trying to accomplish there. And, he gives me the impression that he is. But most prosecutors will grandstand in front of a camera and grandstand in front of a microphone for one reason. One, they're practicing for their opportunity to run for Senate or Congress, either state or federal. And two, they are trying to punch their own report card. You have to understand that a prosecutor operates like a gunfighter. He wants notches in the handle of his gun because he wants to build a reputation for himself. And he wants to build a reputation that is intimidation proof. And so he wants to build a reputation that frightens anyone who will either go against him politically and or any criminal any criminal he approaches, so that he can use the let's make a deal, because if we don't, I'm going to crucify you. And ladies and gentlemen, these prosecutors, all of them, utilize the same technique. They get on the camera, they throw out these emotional statements like I read to you in the story on Jay Steiner. All of it is emotion-laden to get you to think, this guy is a real hero. He's really done something for us as a nation. Go ahead, caller.
Could you introduce your coworker, please?
Yeah, his name is Mike. Go ahead, Mike. You can introduce yourself. He's another Mike, by the way.
Another Mike. I'm a Mike Walters.
Exactly. This is Johnny calling. I'm going to tell you I love your show and I love your input.
Well, thank you so much. Are you talking to me or Mike or the other Mike?
Both of you. I'm talking to both of you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Here. You guys have a great day.
Thank you very much. You too. Thanks for listening. And listen, I got to tell you guys, I appreciate very, very much the loyalty and the support that we get from listeners. And when I say that, I mean emotional support. I get calls all the time from folks who say, "Man, I can't believe that you're local here and that you're doing this radio program and you're telling the truth and you're delivering truth over the mainstream propaganda that's fostered on us every single day." I get it, and I'm grateful that you guys have responded in a way that makes me feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile. Because frankly, if I felt like it wasn't, I'd stop doing it. It cost me a ton of money to be here every day, and it cost me a lot emotionally and physically and mentally. And the costs of those things far outshadow the financial aspect of it. I mean, I do this as a volunteer, right? This is a voluntary effort. And nobody pays me anything to come in here and educate and inform and motivate and activate you guys. But I feel like I've got a calling to do this because we're so close to the oblivion meter that if I kind of got sick and tired of waiting for somebody else to say something, so I figured I would.
I got to tell you something too. I got to speak up on behalf of law enforcement folks that are out there and people that work for the government. And don't think that just because somebody works for the government or they're law enforcement that they don't have thoughts that are contrary to a lot of what gets pushed down their throat. But when you're 18 or 20 plus years into a job and your choice is walk out the door because I've had it, or keep my mouth shut and keep my personal opinion to myself, and you have responsibilities to your family, there's a lot of people out there that things that get said on this show are things that they wish that they could say and opinions that they wish that they could express, but they cannot. And the reason that they cannot is because of that responsibility factor to their family.
Well, I understand that, but I have to say, with all due respect, you know what? I've thrown caution to the wind. I know I'm putting my life, my liberty, and my property and my family responsibility on the line when I do this show every day. And with all due respect to everyone out there who's silent for all of those reasons, they're the wrong ones. I'm doing it. You need to do it too. We'll see you Monday morning. Have a wonderful weekend.
This is KBMV Birch Tree is the Ozarks best news talk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.